good morning and welcome to the Morning Constitution. I'm your host, Joel Hawksley, and it's a production of Jay in Washington. So I really want to just come out and say it. Like, we finish one month, we get into the next month, and we have a whole different focus. Now, yesterday, the President of the United States, being the President of the United States made a proclamation for Women's History Month for 2023. It's 9 paragraphs, technically 8 because one of them doesn't count. It's where he signs it. But it's a long and drawn out thing, and I'm not going to read it, but I'll read some. So, President Biden, during Women's History Month, we celebrate the countless women who have fought tirelessly and courageously for equality, justice, and opportunity in our nation. We also reaffirm our commitment to advancing rights and opportunities for women and girls in the United States and around the world. We are mindful that we are building on the legacy of both recognized trailblazers and unsung heroes who have guided the course of American history and continue to shape its future. Now, it's going to go on. It's going to talk about, because this is the President of the United States who's a Democrat. So he's going to go on and talk about, make sure that he hits every single check mark, if you understand what I'm saying. But he's doing his job. He's making sure he hits all the communities. So what I want to do is I want to talk about history because I love history. And the history that most people don't realize because they don't pick up a book and look beyond what's being taught in school. So, thank you, President Biden. If you want to read it, it's an excellent written. I don't think he had anything to do with the writing, because I know he didn't have anything to do with the writing. His wife would write better than that. Sorry, you got to get rid of. If Biden doesn't get ridiculed on my show, I'm not going to be able to go meet my Republican friends and they'll be like, "Oh, you're turned into a liberal." No, I am definitely not there yet. But what I want to do is I want to take it step by step. And I really want to bring you through women's history as I know it. And to do that, you have to kind of wonder what the milestones, what things happen that most textbooks will be looking at. So you get to about 1848, and you actually have the first women's right convention. It took place in Seneca Falls, New York. So in 1866, Elizabeth Cady Stanton was the first woman to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. So in 1872, Victoria Woodhull, stockbroker, publisher, and protege of Cornelius Vanderbilt, ran for president of the United States to pitch equal rights. 1884, you have Belva Lockwood, the first woman admitted to and practice law before the U.S. Supreme Court. She ran for president on Equal Rights Party. Susan Salter was elected mayor. She was elected mayor in Kansas, the first woman mayor in the country. And we're going to talk about her sometime. In 1888, Oskaloosa, I love that word, Oskaloosa, Kansas, became the first town in the United States known to have an all-woman government, with the mayor and the entire council being female. The council included Mayor Mary D. Lohman and council members Carrie Johnson, Sadie Balsley. I'm gonna do terrible with this. Balsley, and then there's Hannah Morse, Emma Hamilton, and Mitty Josephine Golden. Now, for me, just reading that's a pretty large board. So that probably has a pretty good size city there. And in 1892, Laura Essenhuth, Democrat from North Dakota, was elected superintendent of public instruction, the first woman elected to state executive office in any state. You saw that was a Democrat. Now, I haven't told you any parties up to this point. In 1894, you're going to have the first 3 women elected to a state legislature. There was Clara Cressingham, a Republican, Carrie C. Hawley, a Republican, Francis Clark, a Republican. Oh, now Joel's going to get into he's going to get in there because now he's going to rub it in. Well, in 1895, you have Clara Cressingham, a Republican. She became the first woman to fill a leadership position in the state legislature. So she was the secretary of Colorado House Republican Caucus. In 1896, In 1896, Martha Hughes Cannon, a Democrat, was elected to Utah State Senate. She became the first woman state senator in the country. So now in 1900, wait a minute. Wait. I'm a little confused here. We didn't have women's suffrage until 1920. What? Why is women's history about in the United States starting? When did I start? 1848? That's a lot that happened before 1920. So I think we have a lot to talk about. We have a month to talk about this stuff, but this is a lot of good stuff. And yes, I'm getting it off. I'm getting off Rutgers University. So it's a legitimate site here. Rutgers. Thank you for all this information because this is huge. But now in 1900, Frances Warren of Wyoming becomes the first woman delegate to the Republican National Convention. Listen, becoming a delegate, that's not too difficult, but I'm going to just give her credit because they finally let her in. But you notice it was the Republicans, Republican National Convention. In 1916, and here's where I'm going to start my month. So, yes, I just wasted all that time, but in 1960, Jeanette Rankin, she's a Republican from Montana. She becomes the first woman ever elected to Congress. She serves in the U.S. Congress from 1917 to 1919, and again from 1941 to 1942. She was a pacifist. She was only a lawmaker to vote against U.S. entry into both world wars. But she's the only one. So she's the first woman elected to Congress, and she'll be the first woman to serve in both houses. She's a Republican. She is there. She will be in the Congress when they ratify the 19th Amendment. This is a woman with a lot of history. So Jeanette Rankin, Republican from Montana. But stop for a moment because I want to I keep looking at my notes because I really have a lot of notes and I don't want to make one single mistake because I've really prepared for this because women's history is not as well known. People don't dig in, but we still today use the term first woman too. And until we stop saying first woman too, because we have to get there. We have to get there sometime. But I want you to know clearly women's history is just as important as Black history. And each history, we're going to get into Hispanic history. That's a funny one because it's only half one month and it's half the other. I don't know how they got to split, but we'll have to look that up because that's really interesting. But yeah, so I really want to cover her, but we were talking early. How were these women getting elected? just a bunch of men wanted to elect them? There had to be something. So when you look at it, by 1920, we have, yeah, I think, I'm not sure if we have 50 states or not, but I'd have to look it up. But I know 20. I know 20. Well, Alaska's on the list, so I don't know when Alaska. Somebody look up when Alaska was put into the as a state, because Hawaii came in and then Alaska. My grandmother used to be mad because she wished that Alaska could have that 50 next to it. Yeah, so 1959. So I guess I'm going to say Alaska was voting before that, but the 20 places so the 20 states and territory. Oh, it said states and territories. Okay, that's what I missed. Territories on my notes. So Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Washington, California, Oregon, Montana, Arizona, Kansas, Alaska, Illinois, North Dakota, Indiana, Nebraska, Michigan. And now you've heard all those, and then we're going to go Arkansas. We go from the West Coast all across the Canadian border. So it's beautiful. So women were having the right to vote. And this is why I talk about state rights. A lot of these, at this time, you're going to see a lot of women that are getting elected. Not a lot. I mean, you're getting women elected because there are women voting. They're participating in the process. But this is when I'll talk about state rights all the time. So now, yeah, I got to get a little political. State rights. This is why a lot of these were Republican women. Because the majority were Republican, because the Republican movement was for women's suffrage. So you'll find out when we get to Susan B. Anthony and some of the true pioneers of the actual movement, then you're going to find out a lot more. We're going to talk about Ida B. Wells Barnett. I just forgot her name. I always know her by Ida B. Wells, but she's got a hyphenated name. So when I get to it, I'm going to remember it. But see, this is the wrong time to forget something like that. But she's in my notes. Actually, I think she's in this one. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, she's in this note. Barnett. I was going to be right. I was going to be right, but I stopped myself. So, yeah. So Ida B. Wells, Barnett. I love this woman. I love this woman for a lot of reasons. Because even though we're going through the suffrage movement, she is dogging them because she's a black woman and she doesn't feel they're doing enough to include the black women in this vote. So she's going to try to make sure that all women have the right to vote. Yeah. But she was more of. So Ida is a journalist. And Ida is an anti-lynching journalist. A lot of her life, she lived in danger because she was vocally against the Ku Klux Klan and the lynchings and all that was going on. And that was Democrats. Now I'm going to say something about that. I know I'm off topic. I'm going to get back to Jeanette. But if I don't get a chance to, but today I want to talk about Blaise Egolia, the Republican senator. What he has a bill out there that will amaze you. It would eliminate the Democratic Party. It would just disappear, because if your party had anything to do with slavery, you can't be a party in the state of Florida. So a Republican is trying to say, okay, we should have a law that says anybody who participates, they're taking away the whole southern statues. They're doing this, they're doing that. If they want to wipe out history, I've got a bill for them. I'm going to prove to them that I can eliminate them with just one simple thing. They were the party of slavery. It was in there. From Andrew Jackson, everybody. Our worst president for anything racial is Woodrow Wilson. And when I get there, I told you I always need to have a partner because I'm not gentle with Woodrow Wilson. And a Constitution, because I always go to the Constitution and radical changes to the Constitution at that time. But let me get back to Jeanette, because she's a trailblazer. And when you go through all of this stuff, you learn all these things. You learn about 10 women. You learn about Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Stanton. She's pretty big on that. But the list just doesn't do it justice, because there were women voting, there were women getting elected, there were women that were proving the point that these women would bring to Congress. So, again, I got to be noteworthy here. And which one did I put my note? I put my notes here. Okay. See, now you guys are going, he better never have him vote. He better never have notes again. But I don't want to make a mistake, because women's history is important, especially for a Republican, because to see all the women that have moved so far to the left, to see how vitriol women are to Republican women, it has gotten to be a little hot. And you got to go back to when this was a hot issue, and they were united. They were united, and they were in a different party. So you move a large portion over to the Democrats, and now we have, I mean, the things I've heard them say about the women on Fox, and it's awful. I mean, they're not airheads. They just believe differently than you. The name calling's got to stop. So Ida, Ida goes to Congress. There have already been blacks elected. They weren't treated very well. But Ida's in a Congress all by herself. There's nobody in there working. I mean, there's nobody that's saying, hey, come to the party. Hey, come on over and talk. Hey, let's work on bills together. But she gets more legislation passed by her hard work and effort than any of the men at her time. So Janet Rankin doesn't only do that. She is from a state called Montana. So when I get into conversations about smaller states, think about Montana before 1920. You're talking, today it's still more cows than people. I mean, it's like a beautiful state, don't get me wrong, but a small group of people vote for a woman. A smaller amount of women are voting than men. When you break down exactly what was going on at this time, a consultant's dream victory, because there should have been no way that Jeanette wins. But she's a Republican. She wins her primary. She gets into the general election. People are amazed at how smart, how intricate on the details she's at. If you go on and you watch the series Living Voice. I think it's called Living Voice Bring Life to History. There's a great historical, they'll do them more justice. But the whole point today is to say women's history starts a lot sooner than we ever would believe. Women's history has been deep, deep, not just here in our country. But what we focus on is we focus on right there, women's suffrage. But let's talk about the women that actually pioneered things. So this month, Janet Rankin starts my day. It starts my progress through this month. And I'm going to get to the 10 women in suffrage. I'm going to get to all of that. But today, we recognize on the Morning Constitution, Jeanette Rankin, the first woman to serve in Congress in both houses. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your likes. Today was a briefing, but I will not be noteworthy when I start talking about these women, because the passion I have about these women and what they did is going to be exciting. And I hope I get guests that want to talk about this too, because this to me is my history, the reason I'm a Republican. So Jay in Washington, that's the company that produces this. I'm Joel Hawksley. Like, share, do it whatever you can to be part of us. And then remember, we have Political Salsa coming up in July. We'll be talking about that a lot more on our next show. Thank you.